I've got 5 cards on today's show with some of the highest expectations in their sport, but are they living up to expectations? I'll let you know.
And I'm here to tell you which cards I would buy, sell, or hold.
This is The Forecast. Here hanging out with you guys on another Thursday here on The Forecast. Now, on this week's show, I've got some quarterbacks for you in the NFL. So some of the biggest names that we're talking about with some of the highest expectations in terms of their cards going into this season. I'll tell you how they're doing. But don't worry, it is NBA preseason. I'm still going to hit you with a little NBA, and I even have some hockey for you on today's show. All the players I'm going to be discussing and all the cards I'm going to be discussing on today's show are all from your suggestions. So keep hitting us up right here under the YouTube channel in the comments. Let us know who you want to hear about next week on The Forecast. Now, before I hop right into it, I have to hop right into telling you about our friends at eBay. Of course, this episode of Sports Card Investor is brought to you by eBay. eBay is here for the card collectors with a trick for every trade, like advanced tools for price checking with Price Guide Beta within the eBay app and up to 50% faster listing with Image Scan. Learn how collecting just got smarter at ebay.com/trading hub. So let's start in the NBA, and we're in the midst of the preseason. I feel it. Basketball, it's about to be back, baby. I love basketball season, and of course, like it in terms of the hobby as well. So I'm happy that we're going to be in a point here on this show where we're going to end up getting to talk a lot of hoops moving forward. Let's start with the Chicago Bulls, because this sounds weird to say, but the Bulls actually have expectations this season going into this season because of some of the additions that they made. They added Lonzo, they added DeMar DeRozan, they added Vucevic. You guys want to hear, though, about their guard, Zach LaVine. So let's talk about how those additions and the heightened expectations may or may not affect the value of Zach LaVine's cards. He's not super popular in the hobby right now, but you know, that comes when you're a good player, you're an all-star, but you've been playing on a really bad team. So what happens here if he starts playing on a much improved Chicago Bulls team? Let's see what's happened since some of those names have been added here to that Bulls team. Let's take a look at his 2014 Prism Base PSA 10. Low pop, again, not very popular guy, popular card in the hobby. That card's down about 4% over the last month. So even though we're heating up here in the NBA, we're heading into NBA season, not much excitement in terms of this card in the hobby over the last 30 days. If I look at his 2014 Select Concourse PSA 10, even a lower pop on this count, there's only 141 of these, but there's a lot more movement here. I mean, the value of that card's up 22% as we head into the NBA regular season and things start heating up. So, Geoff, the question is, what do we do here with Zach LaVine? Somebody who's very much overlooked in the hobby, but maybe on a team that's improving. Do we buy, do we sell, or do we hold?
Zach LaVine is a guy who has actually been pretty hyped in the basketball card hobby really ever since he came into the league. And I think it's because he's a high-flying dunker, right? We know Zach LaVine can dunk. That doesn't always translate into wins for his team, but he can dunk. And sometimes that's all it takes to have your sports cards get hyped and to have your prices go up. Making the highlight reels, leading Sports Center with a spectacular play, sometimes that's what you need to have your cards take off. And we've seen a lot of those types of moments from Zach LaVine in prior seasons. But the question is what to do with his cards if you have them today, or should you be buying his cards? Well, there's more hype around the Chicago Bulls entering this season than there has been in years past. They added my boy Lonzo Ball, along with some other nice pieces that should make Chicago a better team. Will it be enough? Well, time will tell. The NBA season is starting. It's right around the corner now. If I had Zach LaVine cards, I would just simply hold at the moment, wait to see what the Bulls do coming out of the gate. If the Bulls start hot, you could definitely see his cards go up in the first few weeks of the NBA season, and that might actually be an opportunity to sell. I might try to wait on LaVine and sell if the Bulls get some early season hype.
So from a guy who hasn't been wildly popular in the hobby to another guy in a very different sport who has been wildly popular in every single regard of the sport and of the hobby. Let's talk about Patrick Mahomes. Now, it is a weird season so far for the Kansas City Chiefs and for their superstar quarterback. I mean, he's been kind of uneven, which is weird to say for Patrick Mahomes. Already as many interceptions in 2021 as he had in all of 2020 and more than he had in 2019. So a rough season so far. The question is, should collectors be concerned? We're still talking about Patrick bleeping Mahomes. He passed for almost 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions so far in 2021. The Chiefs defense looks terrible. That's really my concern there with that Chiefs team, but I don't really have many concerns personally about Mahomes because, again, he's Patrick Mahomes, and a down season for Mahomes is like an okay season for the majority of quarterbacks in the NFL, and I don't quite know what's going on there, but I know how unbelievably talented Patrick Mahomes is, and it feels like they're going to figure it out here with this Kansas City Chiefs offense. Anyways, again, defense, little concern there. Let's take a look at Mahomes' 2017 Optic Base PSA 10. Again, big pop on these cards. If I'm looking at it over the last 30 days since he's had this uneven season so far, that card's down 19% in value. Patrick Mahomes, arguably already one of the greatest of this generation, right? I feel like we can already say that even though he's so early in his NFL career. So is there a buying opportunity here in like a down season for Mahomes? We know some of those opportunities presented themselves with a down season for Lamar Jackson last season, and we see how this season's going for him. Let's take a look at his 2017 Donruss Base PSA 10. Even over the last 30 days. So in terms of this card, collectors are like, nah, it is still Patrick Mahomes, man. We're not worried, even if he's uneven so far here in 2021. Geoff, what do we do here with Mahomes? A very popular name in the hobby. Do we buy, do we sell, or do we hold?
So as part of my morning routine every morning as I'm working out is I love to watch Pardon the Interruption. I always watch the replay from the night before. I love hearing what Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon have to say. And recently, Mike Wilbon has been calling the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes a dynasty of one. And it's kind of chilling, but it's also true if you think about it. The Chiefs have been anointed to the pedestal of being like this unbelievable dynasty, and Mahomes has been put on up there with the very best quarterbacks in the league like Brady and Aaron Rodgers as this absolute megastar. Well, they won one Super Bowl and then they lost another, and this year I'm not so sure they're going to make it back. And what does the future look like for Kansas City, especially as other players in the AFC? You got your Josh Allen rising. You got guys like Justin Herbert and the Chargers on the upswing. I'm starting to worry a little bit about the Mahomes cards that I have in my collection. Now, I'm not panicking. I am holding. I still think Mahomes is going to be very relevant for years to come. But his prices have been dropping, and I would not be surprised if they drop further as this season goes on. At this moment, I'm not a believer in Kansas City getting back to the Super Bowl, and if they don't, Mahomes' prices may go down further. So you could consider selling and then rebuying down the road if you want to get out of it in the short term. Otherwise, just hold, because in the long term, I do think Mahomes is going to go on to break records or certainly challenge a lot of records. He's going to be a great guy to have 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But what does the short-term future hold? It could be a bit dicey for Patrick Mahomes cards.
So from a quarterback I don't have any concerns about overall to a quarterback that still has some question marks overall, and not in terms of his commercials because he's the best actor in the NFL, bar none. And of course I'm talking about Baker Mayfield, but the jury's kind of still out on how actually great he is as a quarterback. I'm one who's been pretty defensive Baker Mayfield. I tend to think he's pretty decent, but I know people and Cleveland Browns fans would certainly like to see more of him and more from him. I mean, he has been kind of like, all right, this year, but the expectations for this Browns team are quite high now. So 1,240 yards passing so far, 4 touchdowns, a couple interceptions. People question, is this dude still more of a game manager than he is a superstar? And collectors are reflecting that same concern that sports fans have. He has been very up and down in the hobby. You know, playing, of course, for Cleveland doesn't necessarily help you in the hobby, and there's always been question marks around that organization. Let's take a look at his 2018 Donruss base PSA 10 here. That card over the last 30 days is down 26% in value. So people in the hobby appear to be getting skittish about Baker from this season so far, even though, I mean, it is a pretty good Browns team. Let's take a look at his 2018 Prism base PSA 10. A lower pop on this one, down 22% over the last 30 days. So people in the hobby getting skittish about Baker Mayfield. There's still some questions there. Geoff, are you skittish about Baker Mayfield? Do we buy, do we sell, or do we hold?
I'm a little surprised that Baker Mayfield's cards have fallen as much as they have over the last couple of months, because Cleveland has actually been a pretty good football team this year. I feel like they picked up from where they left off last season. They're probably not Super Bowl contenders quite yet, but they're a solid team and they're kind of doing what I expected them to do, yet Mayfield's prices are going down. And yes, that reputation as a game manager, that's gonna haunt him. People in the hobby want to buy the cards of gunslingers. People want to buy the cards of quarterbacks that are putting up obnoxious numbers. So if you've got a guy who's perceived as a little more of a game manager and he's good at handing the ball off to his running backs that are the ones that are really the stars of the team, like what we're seeing in Cleveland, that doesn't bode well for Baker Mayfield's card prices. Now that said, if Cleveland breaks through in the future, if they become stronger as a team in the years ahead and are able to make a Super Bowl run at some point in time, then I think no matter what, Mayfield's cards will go up on the back of that type of success. So I own some Mayfield, and right now I'm just holding. I'm not panicking because of the dip. I'm holding. I like Mayfield for the long run. I don't think he's ever going to be the superstar that some of the other quarterbacks in his league are, but I think he's pretty decent, and I want to see what Cleveland can do down the road.
From a quarterback with still some questions in Baker Mayfield to a quarterback who's been answering his questions so far in 2021, let's talk about Joe Burrow. Now, coming off that major injury that he suffered his rookie year, he looked good before the injury. He does come all the way back from that injury, and now he looks great so far in 2021. He's passed for almost 1,300 yards so far, 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's got his Bengals team to 3-2, which people are impressed by because, hey, it's the Bengals. I mean, I'm not saying Joe Burrow's Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert looks generational for the Chargers so far, but Joe Burrow looks very competent and like he may be a very good quarterback in this league. So let's take a look at his 2020 Donruss base PSA 10. Now, over the last 30 days, that card's actually down 14% in value. Not a huge dip, but I'm surprised with the way that he's been playing, which at least in my book is pretty good. And again, strong rookie season before the injury. This guy we don't have a huge sample size for him, but when we have seen him, he's looked pretty impressive. And yet people in the hobby, that value isn't necessarily holding over the last month. If I'm looking at his 2020 Prism base PSA 10, that card's down about 7% over the last 30 days. So that's kind of a nominal dip. It's remained pretty stagnant. What do we do here with Joe Burrow? I mean, he's a player I'm pretty excited about for the future in terms of the NFL. But Geoff, what about the hobby? Do we buy? Do we sell? Or do we, hold on to beauties like these?
Now, unlike Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow is a guy who I feel like can really sling it around and is going to get better and better offensively at that quarterback position. I mean, don't forget, he missed a lot of his rookie year. So we're still seeing a kind of a rookie-ish Joe Burrow right now, and he's been playing pretty well for Cincinnati so far this year. Cincinnati has been an impressively good team, in my opinion, this year. I like their development. I like Joe Burrow's future. I think this guy has a bright future ahead of him. Now, I don't necessarily think this very moment, though, is the moment to be buying Joe Burrow cards. I don't think Cincinnati is a serious contender for the Super Bowl this year. And since we're already underway in the season, I think I would probably just hold off on buying Joe Burrow cards, maybe pick some up when this season ends for next year. I do think he's a smart guy to have in your portfolio for years to come. I would just hold at the moment, pick some up later in the year.
So let's switch gears here for a second. I did a little NBA, I did a little NFL, and you guys still want to hear about some hockey. So I have not forgotten to give it to you. Let's talk about the center for the Buffalo Sabres, Jack Eichel. He's hurt. He wants to be traded from Buffalo. So of course his name is in the headlines, and sometimes that means an effect on the value of cards in the hobby. You definitely see impacts of headlines, drama, stories, injuries, locker room drama, organizational drama. You see that play out in the hobby. And Jack Eichel is one of those players that's being talked about. They're fighting over his surgery. They're fighting over the recovery. A spinal fusion or a disc replacement for a herniated disc in his neck. They're not agreeing on how to move forward with these injuries, which is why he's not getting along with Buffalo anymore. He wants a disc replacement. Apparently, the team would need to agree to that before he could be traded somewhere. He's on the IR, of course, for the start of the season until those sorts of medical issues are resolved. Now, because he's on the IR, though, we're not going to see him play. And if you're not seeing him out there, that doesn't normally necessarily bode well for your value. You don't want him to get forgotten about in the hobby. A great player, though. We know he is a great player. But of course, medical issues are not encouraging for collectors in terms of the long term. Let's take a look here at his 2015 Upper Deck Young Guns base PSA 10. Low pop on this one. There's 714 of these. Over the last 30 days, not much movement on this card. Down 7%. I mean, not a ton of movement on this card. People in the hobby maybe sort of waiting to see how this situation with the Sabres plays out. But Geoff, what do we do here with Eichel? Do we buy, do we sell, or do we hold?
Now, I am definitely not a hockey card expert, so I am not going to sit here and pontificate about what Jack Eichel's career looks like in the future. But what I will say is the situation surrounding this guy, this is pretty odd. This is not something you normally see in sports, where a player is arguing with his team about how to do a medical treatment, a significant medical procedure, that there's disagreement and conflict, and there's trade demands that are going on as a result of this. That is concerning. Concerning, definitely. And the fact that, obviously now the NHL season is underway. This guy is not on the ice. This drama could go on for some time to come. I would not be touching Jack Eichel cards right now. Now, there probably becomes a point in time when maybe he becomes a savvy investment, when maybe the hockey card world has moved on from him and his cards have hit rock bottom. And then that becomes a really good opportunity to buy, so that when he eventually gets healthy and when he eventually lands on a new team and has that comeback, almost assuredly at that moment, his card prices will go back up. But the question is, have we hit the bottom right now? My guess is there's probably still a little further to drop. So I would just hold right now on Jack Eichel.
So there you guys have it, a little bit of everything for you. Again, I love when we get to do a variety of different sports in the hobby, so keep them coming. Again, hit us up with your suggestions, the cards, the players you want to hear about on the next episode of the Forecast right here on the YouTube comments. And as always, guys, I'll be back next Thursday. Definitely hit the bell icon, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of it if you haven't done so already. I'll see you guys next week. And in the meantime, happy collecting.